I will call the meeting to order at 1 o'clock. Do we have any additions to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do. If we can add a new business, probably as 9.5, a referral from town to Stettler subdivisions.
Okay.
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, that is the handout that goes with that item should be physically on your desk somewhere in front of you.
Okay, sounds good. Does anybody else have anything? Go ahead.
I'll move the agenda with the addition.
Any other comments, questions? No, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Minute approval for August 28th, 2024. It's been distributed. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at it?
I'll move it.
Larry made the motion. I'll call the question. All in favor? And carried. No business arising from the minutes. On to development permits 6.1. Just, we have no one online, I take it? Or go in order then. 6.1. Who's presenting this?
Easy on you this today, Mr. Chair. I'll be filling in for Rich, who's away at the ADOA conference and covering his all the items that you'll see his signature on. So the first one is for in the Hamlet of Erskine, in the northeast corner, in our developing subdivision area, and across lot 4 and 5. The proposal is for a detached dwelling and a ancillary detached garage shop. And the reason it ordinarily would be permitted uses, but there is a variance involved in the height of the ancillary building of the shop to go from 16 feet to 20 feet to accommodate a car lift within it. And that variance is above what the development officer is allowed to consider. Therefore, the entire package and the permit comes to Municipal Planning Commission for its consideration. For all intent and purposes, the application of what's proposed meets all the requirements of land use bylaw. The only area where it does not is the question of the height of the garage in the back. Having assessed it, development staff have looked at the surroundings, and this particular parcel backs onto the storm pond to the north, undeveloped parcel to the east, and then to the west is our also undeveloped parcel. So it does have the benefit of kind of being in terms of the character and fit, and also has provided a little bit more setback on the side yard, 6 feet instead of the 3. Which also we think is a bit of a mitigating factor for that additional height. So staff are recommending the variance be granted to allow up to a 20-foot roof peak on the ancillary building. And then of course, you have to deal with the entire permit as a package as well. You can see that laid out in the draft development permit attached to your materials.
Any questions for Craig? Go ahead.
Just on that variance, when you look at the pictures, the water station that one picture shows our water station, and it's got to be pushing that height too, would it not? You know, for within that area.
If it isn't, certainly the school and gymnasium to the west is well.
It looked to me like it was kind of fitting in with what.
I don't think their truck shop is in one of those.
I saw it last night. I must have been staring at it.
That one there is the school to the west.
Yeah, which it would definitely be that high too. So, no.
But it's been a while since I've been to the truck station, but that wouldn't surprise me if we.
Yeah, it's got some height.
It's, any other questions or comments? Les, go ahead.
Just going to move that we approve with staff recommendation with the conditions.
All right, any other debate?
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are these the lots that we just sold? Oh, cool. That was fast build. Yeah.
And fast processing time by planning and development.
Good job.
In all fairness, Mr. Chair, we may have been sitting on the paperwork waiting for a sale to final.
Okay.
But thanks anyway, I do appreciate it.
That's right.
nonetheless, it is exciting to see that development starting to fill in a bit. All right, if there's nothing else, I'll call the question. All in favor? And carried. Moving on to 6.2, development permit 24077.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So this actually is a new development. The first time this type has been presented to you as a group. And I'll remind you, we probably a little bit longer presentation to go through this one, that as a group, when you deal with these discretionary use permits, you do have the prerogative of doing deliberations. You've heard the presentation, any questions in public. You can do those deliberations in private if you so choose. So the application is for two uses: the power generation facility, which we share jurisdiction with the Alberta Utilities Commission, and then also for a data processing use, which we added to our land use bylaw about two and a half years ago. So the power generation component is literally attaching some sort of turbine or other ability to generate power to a gas well, and then powering computers, typically in a CCAN container, for the purposes of mining Bitcoin. So this is a bit of a trend. We're seeing a number of these kind of applications coming through, and this is the first one that we formally had to get to the point of a complete application for us and then bring through for formal decision making. The Alberta Utility Commission approval in this case is not required because the applicant has stayed below the 1 megawatt threshold. So that includes us getting confirmation directly from the AUC that we've interpreted that correctly and there is no AUC requirement that would precede us processing a development permit. And that's the case in this particular development. The other thing that's a little bit unique is that we're talking about a single CCAN container, which you see in the materials that are distributed to you, as opposed to multiple. So a lot of the other ones that we're in the process have maybe standalone generators and standalone CCANs. This is a single combined kind of package unit that is actually manufactured out of China, where one half contains the gas turbine, the power generation component, and the other half contains the computers that are going to be doing the data crunching and mining for Bitcoin. But physically, it looks basically like a CCAN container, but then with a big exhaust fan on the upper surface. So if the big issue for planning staff in evaluating this, other than navigating the new regulatory requirements, making sure it meets our land use bylaw, which is a new section for us, really comes down to noise and what the impact of these are on the adjacent properties. Because of the potential shared jurisdiction with AUC, it's handy for us to say, do your noise assessments just like you would for the AER at the AUC. They have a well-established methodology. The consultants are used to working under that, and the benchmark thresholds that are used are well-established in terms of dealing with oil and gas type facilities across the rural landscape for many years. Where we may differ is on the interpretation and the application of the results from our provincial counterparts. So the provincial counterparts will look at the distance to the nearest receptor, and they'll say what happens at the building face of the existing buildings. They won't look at future issues and impact on adjacent quarter section that may be vacant, that maybe doesn't have a house on it as of yet. Whereas from a land use planning perspective, that's kind of the issue of spillover or nuisance or conflict of use issue that we try to look ahead at and regulate where need be. So that's probably the biggest kind of difference in our application of the noise study results from what the AUC would do and what the AER would do. But in this particular case, the AUC doesn't have to grant a formal approval. So we don't have a formal approval from AUC that we have to make sure that we dovetail with or not contradict. So if we could jump to probably the most exciting ones for the noise study are the graphs, and I'll try to do a quick walkthrough on some of those. So when the noise studies are done, they have to look at all the cumulative noise effects and what's actually happening on the ground already. And that's kind of the before picture that you can see up on the graph in front of you. And just interpreting that what the drawing you're seeing. The air photo, you can make out the quarter section boundaries and through the big green shield. And then the red dot in the middle is lease location within the lease area where the Bitcoin container would be. And then radiating out from that in the colored rings, you see the level of sound dropping gradually as you move further away from the facility. And the key point on that drawing for us is where the yellow line meets the green line. And that's the point where it's dropped to a sound level of 40 decibels. And 40 decibels is the standard that AUC has used for many years as the nighttime permissible sound level. You can do higher in the daytime, but given the nature of the use, most likely you're going to set it to the most restrictive noise level, which is the nighttime of 40 decibels. So that means if that hit a building base and was at 39, AUC would usually say that's okay, that's acceptable. Again, though, they look at the existing receptors, whereas we have to take into account what's happening in the future. So if you go to the next slide, the consultants then add on the additional noise generation from the proposed facility. And it's important to remember it's not an issue of as simple of 1 + 1 = 2. It's we add it together and it's a logarithmic curve. So the numbers, if you're looking at the tables, you can see, hey, 37 has been added to 37. Why isn't it coming out as 74? It's because it's not how sound levels are the octaves or the noise levels are measured. So we do have to rely on the consultants in terms of their interpretation of that. So those two items would actually combine and push something up from, say, 35 decibels, sort of 34 decibels, to maybe collectively maybe 35.5 decibels. So that's what you're seeing in that chart. So on this before graphic, what you're seeing is that 40 decibel line, nighttime level, has moved out. And can we zoom? Oh, I hope it's zoomed in enough on the screen so you can see the north part just kind of bows out and goes over the quarter section line. And by and large, it is a bigger ring than our before scenario. And largely in this particular case, again, it's only one turbine and one CCAN container, but it didn't take long to get to the edges of that quarter section without having the spillover effect. So the host quarter section, which currently doesn't have a house on it, would bear the brunt of that greater than 40 decibel sound level at night. And there's very few corners left in the host quarter section where you could place a house that wouldn't be subject to greater than 40 decibels at night. So that to us is probably the best way to manage some of these and look at the noise issues. If it spilled over too much on the neighbor's property, I think we would get into a scenario where we're starting to look at what that neighbor can do in the future and starting to take away options for them. And there is a reason why this discretionary use for us is to be able to evaluate the impact on the adjacent properties, make sure it fits the context.
Go ahead, Liz.
So, and then it's still possible there could be additional development permit applications down the road to expand this. And
Could be. So if, bearing in mind that when we deal with development permits, we have to deal with the matters on the ground today. We can't predict a really negative future, but just to answer the question, the way the noise studies go, they always have to look at the cumulative amounts. So if this one's already approved and on the ground, the next person in has to count for its noise profile and then add their own to it. So if you look at it as kind of how much noise can we have before we break the back of the camel? If this one took up the vast majority of the space, stopped at like 38 decibels, then the next party in, regardless of how many cans or containers they have, they only have a little bit of left before they get to that 40. And then we would have something that I would probably be back in front of you saying that that's just too much of a negative impact on the adjacent properties. So there is a first in type effort. The other aspect is within a certain radius, they have to take into account, it's not just the noise from their compressor site, it's anyone that's also within the general vicinity. We have to assume that existing background level of noise is already relatively high at the 35 decibel level. So that there is a consideration of cumulative impacts, and actually in future developments, we'd be asking those questions again and being able to see the results. Can we go on to, there's another graph, if you wouldn't mind. That's one, thank you. So just a little bit of relationship to the existing dwelling. We may have marked this incorrectly. So that existing dwelling that's up to the northwest is approximately 900 to 1,000 meters away from the the point in the lease area where the CCAN will be located. Our land use bylaw says for the data processing, the starting point is the setback of 1,200 meters. But it does allow, the next clause down, the development authority to look at a reduced setback subject to the outcome of a noise study. So it's not a variance per se, it's still an exercise of discretion on whether or not it should be subject to the 1,200 meters setback. But that existing house is not, it does fall within the 1,200 meter distance from this particular facility. So the other aspect I'll draw your attention to before going to the development permit is the issue of the noise that we're seeing right now is done by professional consultants using modeling. So they take the information from the manufacturer of the product and they identify the equipment on it and try to get a noise profile created from that. It's not from an actual in-field, real-world test. So we are recommending, also is contemplating in our land use bylaw, the ability to attach a condition that requires monitoring to make sure that what we've been promised is what we end up getting. So we don't find out later on that it's operating at 46 decibels instead of 40 decibels. So turning our attention to page 27, we see the development permit conditions.
Do we have any idea of what the current noise level is? Like, this is an existing facility.
Yeah, actually, let's go to that one right now. So we did attach the entire noise study in the materials, and it's just a question of having to flip to the correct table. Sorry, Andrew, you're gonna have to bear with me because I don't have that entire study committed to memory. The ones in our reports are not the ones that would necessarily, it's another one that we didn't pull into the report. It actually goes to that question. So if we could start at page 40 of the PDF. And maybe exactly. So this goes a little bit, Mr. Chairman, to your question about just trying to itemize the things that are already on the ground, such as a water injection building, and say, okay, how much noise do these things already generate? The gas mine 250 air package is actually what is part of the proposal. And if we scroll down into the next series of tables, they will do a combined. Yeah, so table 4 on the next, maybe I was wrong. It may have been. Yeah, so it's a sound level of existing AER regulated equipment is on when you're looking at the 3 bolded lines at the bottom. And you can see that that's rated at coming out at 29.8 on dBA scale. That's where that 40 is applied. Then looking at the sum if they add on the gas mine unit and both the power generation and the Bitcoin, which pulls us up, and then add those together. Again, it's not a 29 plus 31 equals 60. It comes out to 34 is a predicted sum or noise contribution. Now that is 34 is measured at residence 1 at the face, which is now that house that's on the quarter section to the north, 900 to 1,000 meters away. It's not the standard I was mentioning about where does the 40 stop relative to the quarter section line. So we understand the nature of impact on the adjacent property, even if they don't have a house yet.
Good.
I haven't lost anyone yet to add or. Okay, so
Just a question, that residents to the north, they're aware this is applied for and
no, actually, that's probably a function of the new ones. We, very few discretionary use permits, so we actually circulate beforehand, and because they didn't have to go through the AUC approval process, that part wouldn't have occurred either. So they would receive notice like we do with a lot of our other discretionaries after we made a decision. As an adjacent property, they would get a copy of the decision and then be able to choose whether or not they wish to appeal our decision on, well, assuming the MPC approves it. They couldn't appeal refusal.
Because there is a couple properties there, they are used, this is the same spot that existing batteries sat for quite a few years, but I mean, it is additional noise to it.
No matter how you cut it, noise in the area is going up. The question is whether or not it's still within a reasonable threshold. And that's where we also have a difference of opinion, say, between the AUC regulator and the AER. Because we will, well, from my perspective, we'll take into account the future houses that aren't there yet, whereas the AER, AUC won't. So I don't think it's just the one existing house, all the adjacent quarter sections around would also get notice of the decision, because they too may be saying, I was thinking about putting a house kind of close to that line. Maybe they have a concern, maybe they don't. And once we have that decision clearly articulated, then at least they know what the outcome could be and can choose to appeal from there.
So, just so I fully understand the differences in our approach and the regulators. If they decided not to go forward with the Bitcoin mine, but decided to install a natural gas compression system, we would not be involved in that in any way, shape, or form, correct?
So I assume you mean like just the power generation component. They just,
Well, compressors use sales. It's
if it was for their own on-site, and it would probably fall fully under the AER regulatory regime. Or I don't think they would just generate power for the sake of power. If they're getting past the 1 megawatt threshold, then AUC would make them go through a more formal process and seek a formal approval, which does trigger the question of public consultation. And then if they're doing that, there may be additional questions of what do you do with the power? Are you selling it to the grid or how, or what have you? So this phenomenon is probably going to be, we're going to be seeing more of this in the future, because it's it's new for us. We're trying to get a sense of it as well. And there's two things that seem to be attractive is one, the ability to use up some surplus gas that may prevent you from flaring as much. The other may be to kind of mitigate a liability as much as you can. And the other may be the prospects of making money on the Bitcoin market. So that seems to be what's driving this. For an industry that's trying to diversify, but they're not used to dealing with municipal approvals. They've gone years and years of not having to seek our approval, which is a bit of a learning curve for them as well.
Where this is located, they did have a compressor operating in the past. I believe it's shut in now.
Yeah.
But I drove in there looking for an operator here about a month ago, and just kind of the state of their whole operation here is a little bit like it looks like it could use a board inspector to come out and take a look. The whole piece of it though goes is are we setting precedents by putting this on a battery site like that? And then the next application that comes in, we've set a precedents of that they could, where they can go and how far they are from residents, et cetera.
Strictly speaking, no. So the concept of precedent comes up a lot in planning concern issues, but when you sit here as a development authority and act, you're falling under more administrative law. You're not bound by a previous decision. You were always going to face the issue of, well, we expect a degree of consistency, but the reality is when these land in front of you, discretionary use means we're dealing with on a case-by-case basis. So you could literally look into what looks like very comparable cases, but just say on this location, yes, on this location, no. So you're not strictly speaking bound by your previous decision. In all cases, though, you still have to articulate a rationale and reason for your decisions, relying on relevant planning considerations.
I'm not sure what the answer would be if the residents in that area were polled though, with this company's record, eh?
Yeah, so the other aspect is who makes the decision. It has to be, we don't delegate the authority to the neighboring landowners.
Yeah.
It's you as a group have to maintain that authority and make a call.
I guess I'm just making a statement that I think if they're
I think my guess in some of these, if it was to go to a public open house, then there may be lots of questions about how you've been as a neighbor for the last 50 years. Now you have to listen to us. Oh, good. There's a distinct possibility. Matter of fact, that's been our experience as a department with some of the applicants. The first reaction seems to be, you're kidding, right? I don't have to get your approval. And then we do a few phone calls or email exchanges, followed by, I don't think you need that, followed by us saying, yes, we do. And you can see that in this particular application, that getting the written confirmation from AUC, the applicant didn't think that was something we really needed, but nonetheless, we got what we needed on. So we're still I think we're going through some of those kind of growing pains right now.
Because the owner of the property where this is located is not located in this area. It's still a county of Stettler resident, but is quite a ways away.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to live by
You're not gonna hear it from where he lives.
the person that he leased it to. Well, fortunately, so basically what it falls to us, especially when we're dealing with any discretionary permits, is when there's people that aren't in the area there yet, this is where we have the opportunity to look at that long-term application or policy. And we can say, well, we're the only ones that can speak on behalf of that future house. Sometimes that is a role that you end up playing when you're looking at the design of the subdivision, design of or the impact of a potential use. It's not to say that there's a guarantee that there's going to be a house there in the future date, but are we trying to minimize the limitations that may be placed by approving this use on the ability of that neighbor to also be able to use and enjoy their property to a reasonable level? So that's a large part of why I've tried to say that I think our threshold should be, where is that 40 decibels landing? And if it crosses a quarter section line, how much of that quarter section has now been impacted? Is there any place left to put a house? And if the answer is no, I would lean towards a recommendation saying refusal. I'm not sure if there's another question.
Go ahead. Been sitting through some meetings in Calgary about mature assets, which this would fall underneath. And about looking at taxation as a way for some of these companies to make their books black versus red. So, this is leading this whole piece into this. From a taxation basis on this, is it taxed as how is it taxed if there's power generation on an existing site that does use other power on that site? I would be really surprised if they didn't tie the rest of their plant into that generator.
I think they'd be crazy not to.
Yeah. So if they are though, if the definition of what that is different than site going to Bitcoin operation on a single valve.
I'm not going to even try to hazard a guess
So
on how
it's just where they're placing this makes me, from the conversation we were just in Calgary, makes me a little nervous. We've got another 3 sets of them. So we could discuss these, but Bitcoin was one of the big items on that list that we were in Calgary that are going through it. So seems like people are trying to slip these in wherever they can.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't like that characterization from some of our other meetings. Actually, we had another party that wanted to tell us at length that the level of work that went into their selections, but they too are still getting used to the concept of municipal approvals and just a different perspective. And this is why if there was an AUC proceeding for us to interact in, the reason why we get standing is so that we can share with that commission that's not used to dealing with land use planning issues, our perspective. And then they can take that and weigh that in their decision about the public interest. So I'm afraid I can't really answer the taxation. I guess my best guess is going to be specialized industrial or M&E type taxes, and whether or not it's good or not. At the development permit stage, the issue of tax status and how much we get is not typically considered one of the relevant planning considerations.
It's when they're trying to slip them in on the other locations and not pay tax on the equipment is where I'm trying to go with it.
Add to that problem, or maybe it gives them more revenue to pay for the problem, but there's a good chance that we're still going to have the same problem. Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, if I could turn your attention to page 27, which starts to lay out some of the DP conditions that are recommended it is a recommended for approval. Again, very much contingent on the fact that we're seeing a noise impact that stays within the host quarter section. It is very specific to this model make of gas turbine because that's what was modeled in the noise study that we're relying on. So you can't just swap out the equipment necessarily exact the same sound impact. So what we're saying in this is if you do that, your permit's no longer valid. You're coming back because we're only approving that equipment that you gave us a noise study about. We're also recommending that we insert in the land use bylaw in the agricultural district, we put in a clause that says the approval for these uses should only be 5 years max. So certainly we are putting that as one of our conditions that this permit, if you choose to approve it, will expire September 2029. And then the applicant has to choose if they're just going to get it off the site or reapply, and then we will reevaluate it based then on yet another noise study. We decided to put in a condition about the rural addressing because historically we haven't done addressing for industrial sites, and there is a potential here that an ambulance or emergency response may have to go to the compressor site. So we added that condition. Andrew, can you scroll down? Please, go to the next ones. Number 4 is a bit of a lengthy one, giving the applicant 1 year to bring to the development officer actual field tests and noise results to basically show that the modeling that we had at the initial decision making is what we're actually getting on the ground. We picked a 1 year time frame because we're not sure how fast the applicant will be able to set up on site. And not being an expert in noise, I'm not sure if that's something you want to shoot for like a summer for actual measurement, or if it's something that's really not seasonal dependent or not. But we also didn't want to let it go too long. So if we don't have that by September of 2025, your permit is now subject to a stop order. Or if the results come in and we say, okay, you didn't make it, you're at 42 decibels, what's your buffering plan? What are you doing now? Or failure to do that, we're shutting you down. And then number 5, of course, is follow your site plan, put it where you said you would put it. If there's any further questions, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to field them. And again, I'm going to remind you of your prerogative to deliberate your decision in camera if you so choose.
It doesn't state in here if it is a turbine or a recip,
I think it does. It does give us our specs.
because one thing we're hearing this on recips running gensets. If you have air conditioning units in those that are cutting in and cutting out, that pitch is going to be changing throughout the day. Could be continual. If your air conditioner's kicked in at a certain point or stayed on all the time, should be a fairly steady sound. But if they're kicking in and out, that is a annoying whine of a turbine.
You would be shocked how big of an HVAC system is required for the Bitcoin miners themselves. Once you get a bunch of those in an enclosed building, it would put off comparable heat to the actual engine. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, and the big, them turbines, we had them north there when we first bought that farm, that's years ago. And they finally we made them put a set of mufflers on and it was good. But this here thing here, that clang, clang, you're not going to do that. What a way to depopulate a country area. You take away all, if somebody wants to build across the road there, wherever. But if you okay this bit line. I'm voting against it. In the show.
Vote however way you wish.
That's right. It's a free country. Believe it or not. Some people don't think so.
Go ahead, Ernie.
I'm just kind of wondering, okay, like being that there's a shutdown of the Nevis gas plant and there's talk about having to flare gases, is this going to be opening up some doors for more possibility of these going around the countryside?
Go ahead.
It could be, but on the same sense, a lot of the Nevis gas plant flaring you're hearing about right now is not really a favorable gas. It's sour composition, which creates a lot of fouling and stuff in engines. And most of these companies aren't going to want to run their engines on sour.
You would likely have to treat it before you burnt it, but I mean, even if you treat it or sweet gas, I mean, gas prices have been pretty bad for a number of years. I think some of these oil and gas companies are looking at, we can produce our power, and for the negligible price we get for natural gas, there's more benefit this route than the alternative.
So I'm not sure, Mr. Chair, if Councillor Gender's question was more of a political change in restrictions on flaring and whether or not this helps some of our operators out. And I think in this particular case, this applicant thinks it may help them with that to the tune of 1,500 metric cubes of, can't remember if it, what the time frame was associated with that. I don't know whether or not that's a big help, a small help, and or whether or not it would tip the balance for people to start to suddenly flood us with more and more of these applications.
Go ahead.
Means that Larry's been in the oil patch, and like it was just something I'd seen in kind of some write-ups about having the flare gas, no place to sell it, whether there's a possibility, but pretty much answered it.
I'm of two minds with the sterilization argument. One, yeah, this definitely could have an impact on future development, but this is a pretty large battery as is, with the potential of making just as much noise and never coming before us. As far as affecting the adjacent quarters, frankly, I think that ship has sailed, and they could drop a compressor in here tomorrow, make the exact same amount of noise. We would never even hear about it. AER would approve it, and there would be no change to the visual. It'd be negligible in that sense. And the noise would be comparable, only we'd never hear about it. I think the ship has kind of sailed on the impact to the adjacent quarters with the existing facility in this case. Go ahead.
I look at it also, say, like if you've got a confined feeding operation, once they are set in, the next person coming up looking for putting a residence in, it's kind of like the first come, first served in there too. So when do we stop production of, say, like with installations like this versus someone could possibly move in next to the border next to it?
Yeah, so I think just drawing a little bit, Mr. Chair, on or Councillor Gender's question. So if you already had a quarter section that is greater than the 40 decibels from an AER approved facility, I don't believe those setbacks are reciprocal. So I can still choose to put my house in a noisy area after the fact, similar to the CFO, that minimum distance separation. It's not reciprocal on someone's future decision to put a house. That's kind of, you kind of left to your own devices on that choice. And that's just unfortunately the way we do it. What I'm suggesting in this is that when it's our turn, that we, I appreciate the comments that the AER can do what they are, and we've kind of been ignored for 50 plus years. But the regime, the nature of the uses, nature of the approvals are changing. So this is finally our chance to insert our perspective, if you so choose, and apply that as much as possible. If I can answer another question about the frequency, can we jump to page 44 for a second? And again, I'm not a sound expert on this, but towards the tail end of the study, they look at that kind of throttling up or change from low frequency to high frequency. And there's usually a quick table at the back that says, depending on how much the shift is, it may fall within acceptable parameters for the AUCs in the ER, 44 in the PDF. Yep, that's it. Yeah, so it's a little bit of more information on that, but usually it's the more core one is the benchmark of the dBA. What's the average level of noise, again, at the nighttime 40 decibel level.
All right, Larry, go ahead.
you talk about, issues that could have been there and they wouldn't have had to apply. I have received very many phone calls, not on this particular instance, but about operations in this area. It's very close to where I live. And it's from the residences that are outside this sound area. As far as if there was any other systems going in anywhere, it would probably be these individuals because they have the leases kind of tied up in that area. So what is allowed by us here, I guess, roundabout way, we have to listen to the landowners that pay taxes to our county that surround this place too. So it's as we're, I'm not just picking on this one, but we're going to see more of these, I'm sure. Just have to be really looking at how we're judging it in all areas and where there is any population. Like there's within fairly close proximity, it's not within that 1.2, there's only one residence kilometers, but there is another 2 very close, just past that 1.2. And then there's 2 more just to the north of it. So in that area south of Gadsby, it's fairly highly populated. It doesn't sound maybe like Red Deer or Edmonton, but it's really highly populated and people do like their peace and quiet. It's all in perspective. So the questions I'm asking is not to pick on this site. It's where are we going forward with this and when can the next one go in and when could the next one go in if the door is open is my own concern.
Fair enough. Is there any other questions or comments from the board?
Like you said, we can take this away and deliberate it.
Yeah, actually, right now, Mr. Chair, if you want to go into the debate about it, you could actually go in camera as a group and deliberate it. And then we'd have to come back public for one of 2 results, most likely. An approval or a refusal with reasons. So I will point out, one of the reasons why we can do that is because when I sit there at the desk and I figure out whether or not I want to approve something, I don't load up another party for their appeal because I don't get to see what the inner machine workings of my thought process. Collectively, for you as a group to achieve the same thing, you have to do that in a private session. And this is subject to a appeal rights. This one, given that we're dealing with an AER regulated site, the appeal would go to the Land and Property Rights Tribunal.
So what is the consensus of the board? Is this something we'd prefer to debate more in camera?
I know I would.
I'll entertain a motion then.
I'll make the motion that we deliberate in camera.
All right, call the question. All in favor?
Okay, and on item number 6.2, I'd like to put a motion forward that we move this to our November NPC meeting. And all adjacent landowners are included as part of a public engagement in this, so they have time to talk to them beforehand so that people can come in and present themselves the way that they feel they need to. So does that cover a motion?
So we have a deferral until the November MPC to allow time for public input. Do we have any other questions or comments regarding the motion?
With that meeting, we have to put in there that the public affected could attend the meeting also.
It's a normal practice, but it doesn't hurt to reference. That's part of your parameters for your public engagement.
Yeah, that the affected public could come in and sit through that meeting and address it if they need to.
All right, any other comments or questions about the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? All right, moving on. We have 7.1 subdivision files. And Craig, you'll be taking this one again?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this one, back to a little bit more familiar terrain for us. It is for a removal of farmstead to create just shy of a 15-acre parcel. And Andrew, if you can pull up page 75 of the PDF. We can see the proposed parcel in the pink outline. It is the first parcel out of this particular quarter section. And most of it is, most of the parcel is occupied by paddocks and items that we would consider parts of a farmstead. And it does max out to the 10 acres that we would consider for the calculation of the Rural Development Fund. The area to the north is intended to accommodate the open discharge that's there. So that's why that portion is included to create the 15-acre parcel. The access onto Range Road 18-4 is suitable both for the farm and the field remnant and the proposed parcel, although there is a question of some brushing at the access point to get that 160, 150 sight line distance to the north and south. So we are recommending a condition for brushing in that effect. The road allowance is for 18-4 is already meets our 30-meter requirement, so we don't need a road acquisition agreement in that respect. The Rural Development Fund contribution would be probably for $4,800 in this case. They have, in our view, justified the use of the full 10 acres as part of the paddock and the farm buildings and the driveway, but the remaining, largely to the north, 4.8 acres is strictly to accommodate the open discharge. So our policy says that is subject to the $1,000 an acre charge. We had some brief comments from the gas company, if you've read those, that had some issues originally. The proposal was to create a smaller parcel, but that split a service area that would have triggered the need to have a separate gas contract and $10,000 worth of new metering or new contract set up. So the applicant opted to modify their parcel and take in all the buildings that are served by the existing gas service. And that took care of Paint Earth Gas Co-op's comments. The recommendations for approval are relatively straightforward in this one, Mr. Chairman. It's property taxes, have your surveyor do up your plan, provide us the indication of our approval for the brushing. And of course, I can't remember the fifth one or the fourth one. So Andrew, could you find us the page for the conditions, please? Oh, there it is, my mistake. I forgot about the power line for ATCO. They are looking to get a right of way for a transmission line. So they'll sort that out between the landowner, but then they have to check in with us to make sure it's okay. So with that, Mr. Chair, the recommendation is for approval subject to those 4 conditions that you see on the screen attached to the approval.
Go ahead, Dave.
Make it, prove it, away we go.
Motion to approve with recommendations. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, call the question, all in favor? Carried. On to reports. Craig, you're taking this?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. It's, my on-screen stuff seems what Peter doing on here, Andrew, so I'm going to be more reliant on you. So Rich has done up a quick note on what's happening in the department and just a couple typos. The first two bullets, it's supposed to be a September to September comparison. And the projections were about 3 development permits off the pace compared to last year. Also, I wanted to point out that we do have a second development officer. The position has been successfully recruited. They'll start with us on October 1 as their first date. And Rich is currently enjoying the ADOA conference, which I'm hopefully Bitcoin operations is one of their key topics they're learning about. Certainly it is topical, and he's away for the rest of the week to do that as part of the networking and growth and professional development for the staff. Rich is also taking a lead on the marina cleanup of the debris, so he'll be looking at that a little bit more on site with the contractor when he's back starting next week. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to try and field any questions about the department report.
Questions?
Because he was just talking about the lake cleanup. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
I think I missed out on the last one, when I had to send in a question of what it really referred to.
So this came up last at council meeting. We passed the budget. There was a number of items included in this project. There was some work in that forebay and the storm drainage, the actual boat launch itself, changing the angle to make it a little more usable.
That was the debris that was left behind also.
That was a key driver in this project, is getting the remainder of the debris left by the past contract.
He was up our backside.
They definitely made it abundantly clear that they wanted that cleaned up.
Just to add to that, Mr. Chairman, given that we're experiencing some significant low water levels, we found at the bottom of the ramp, there's also some rocks that have spilled over that if we're going to have to contend with these low lake levels on a more frequent basis, it may be an opportunity to clean that up. It wasn't a problem when we had an additional 4 feet of water, but it certainly is now if this is going to be our new reality.
I mean, from a maintenance standpoint, Alberta Environment's doing the same with their drainage all the way along Harley-B Creek and multiple others where it's been decades since they've seen the water this low, so they can access and do maintenance on areas that were otherwise not accessible.
So that was it coming out of that development or that fund?
The social reserve fund is where the funds were coming from based on the motion.
You know, back in about the early 70s, that lake was as low as what it is now. Because like over the years, I've had to assist on moving boathouses up the shoreline because of it.
It has been lower than this on multiple occasions.
Fair enough. I think we probably should qualify our comments on post-stabilization program. This is the lowest we've been kind of experiencing.
Which we wouldn't be this low if it wasn't for the Russian curve, so.
Yeah, fish.
Yeah, all the blame because of a goldfish.
There's gold in our lakes.
Any other questions about the development officer's report? Paul,
I'll move to accept the report.
any other questions? We're just doing this motion. All right, call the question, all in favor? And carried. Moving on to new business. 9.1.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This one is a referral from the National Resources Conservation Board about a proposed change and expansion of an existing CFO for the Red Willow Colony. It is to change animal units. So 1,400 lamb are being removed from their approval, and about 28,000 chicken layers are being added to their approval. So this NRCB asked for our input in terms of location, not necessarily how to deal with things like manure management, whether or not we have any policies that would impact the location of the site in terms of an exclusion zone close to an urban municipality, and that our setbacks have been reflected. So having evaluated the application, it is well outside of any exclusion area. So it's not close to a town or a future multi-lot residential area that we have planned or one of our hamlets. And the barn itself has very generous setbacks of 200 plus feet from roads and property lines. So it definitely meets our setback requirements.
Go ahead. When you mentioned manure handling, like you go from 1,400 sheep or lambs to, I know a lamb is bigger than a chicken, but that is a pile of chickens. Like 28,000,
I think.
more chickens. That has to increase their manure management handling, I would think.
And that part of the jurisdiction falls completely with the NRCB. So it's they will filter our comments back to what they consider the land use provisions about exclusion area and setbacks.
Would it be liquid, I wonder, or would it be solid? Because we're running into more and more issues with the liquid of having to change pumping valves. And so they can make the decision, the NRCB, but then it falls back to us on how the applicants handle their manure handling after that point.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the details of the manure handling for this particular application are. So,
Ernie, go ahead.
I'm just saying that there's an opportunity for probably a board member that's missing, that there's 1,400 sheep available. Stalls that are available. When we were gone, our little hound, they could say, it's a poodle. The first time I'd ever seen a sheep. I just looked at it and said, that sucker's fuzzier.
I am a little disappointed. James is not here to make jokes about people getting out of the sheep business, but
I'm sure you'd vote against it.
any other questions or comments?
the motion, Mr. Chair, should be along the lines of formally communicate our conclusions that you see in the memo to the NRCB. Our assessment of it against it's outside of our exclusion zone and meets our setback requirements.
If someone's willing, I'd entertain a motion instructing administration to send along memo to the NRCB.
I don't think so.
All in favor? Carried. 9.2, referral from Village of Big Valley.
Sure. So this is being referred to us as a subdivision is adjacent to county lands on the coming out the north end of the village and out the south end. We're dealing with the two long railway strips that go through the village and also go through the station grounds. So the application is to create two separate parcels. Out of those, one to accommodate the station grounds and some of its existing buildings, and the other is the proposed lot one is largely an undeveloped area. I think there's one accessory building in that area. I don't see any concerns from a planning perspective for the county and recommend that we communicate that back to the Village of Big Valley that we have no concerns with the proposed subdivision.
Dave, go ahead.
I don't think we have any, it's not in our county, and I don't think we have any objection to it. I would should receive it for information.
I think this one will be the same as last, to send a letter to the Village of Big Valley.
You need a motion then. Got it.
Dave has made the motion to instruct administration to send along the memo to the Village of Big Valley, saying we have no concerns. Ernie? Oh, you're voting? All right, all in favor? Carried. And we are on to 9.3, referral from Town of Stettler. Their bylaw 2176-24.
So the town is updating the bylaw based on the regional master servicing study that we partnered with them on a few years ago. So this has been kind of a cleanup item for them now that we've actually formally adopted the study a few months back. We've also adopted a water and wastewater agreement. So some lands in the county are eligible to access town water and wastewater. Part of that agreement also means if you do connect, you're expected to contribute the comparable amount as the offsite levy. And what the referral indicates is that the levy is going up from $5,000 an acre to around $6,500 per acre. So the town has given us a chance to provide our input, and my understanding is they've also sent letters to the county ratepayers that are in the area that could benefit, so they too have an opportunity to present their thoughts to town council at their upcoming public hearing on October 2. So the recommendation, oh, sorry, my mistake, October 1. Recommendation from administration on this one is to let the town know that we have no concerns with the proposed changes to the offsite levy bylaw.
Ernie?
In there, does it state the amount, like, or percentage of the taxes that are to be paid towards the town? Does it have to be in there or not be in there?
It doesn't. It probably, I don't think it has to be. The town has to pass an offsite levy bylaw and follow a large number of rules laid out in the MGA and in the regulations. So the tax sharing arrangement is kind of a separate, is related, but it's just treated separately. So it's certainly documented in our water and wastewater agreement, and it's still in our existing 2009 IDP until we get around to updating the IDP. It too depends on if a property owner connects and which of the two services or both, if they connect to both.
Thank you.
Russ, go ahead.
I'll make the motion that we let the town know we have no concerns with their update.
No other hands, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. 9.4, request for decision, change in date of our October MPC meeting.
I can take it. So this is just a straight reflection of what you saw this morning with the Ag Service Board. We have some conflicts for Ag Service that day, so we're proposing just to flip cow around so that we don't need the administrative staff for ASB, and rather than just move ASB and split the committee of the whole into an afternoon one day and a morning a different day. We thought we'd just move everything.
All right. Can I get a motion? Paul?
I'll move that we change it to the 24th from the 23rd to go along with Ag Service Board.
All right, all in favor? Carried. Now on to the addition, 9.5. The referral from,
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I may have yet another last minute addition to ask and to circle back to, if you don't mind.
after 9.5? Okay. Go ahead.
So this one, if, Mr. Chair, if people have a chance to look at the sketch, maybe just go a little slower through this one. And actually I want to look at, they came in a different order, but maybe we'll look at the second sketch first. So this one does deal with the Wellings development, which you're familiar with. It's just on the west side of 70th over here, south of the UFA. And about a year ago, we looked at a very similar subdivision referral and sent back our comments indicating that we have no concerns. What's changing in this is the boundaries between the 4 blocks of land, reflecting a changing in how the developer wishes to go about the phasing and build out of the project. So that is why it's being recirculated for going through the subdivision process again, and has been recirculated to us for comment. So that hasn't fundamentally changed from what we looked at about a year ago. If we switch to the other drawing, Andrew, so they are related. We have 2 things happening. In the north part, you see a little squiggly public utility lot that's cutting through one of the lots that's yet to be created, which is typically to accommodate, I'm not sure what it's accommodating. My guess is based on the shape, probably a lift station of some sort. Could be a possibility there. And then the second part is dealing with the land that's south of the town's Lot 2MR. Lot 2MR, when you physically look at the land, that's where you see it's been recently hayed and you can see the water laying in the field. That's Lot 2MR. South of that, it gets a little bit more undulating terrain. And then what the proposal is saying is south of that 2MR, still private land, is a 1.2, so almost a 3-acre parcel is being created in the intersection, comparable to the size of a parcel that could accommodate something like the points west. And the remainder of that private area is being provided to the town as public land, as municipal reserve dedication. In brief conversation with the town staff, my understanding is this is it does relate to a bit of a trade-off arrangement between the developer, the town, and Alberta Environment in terms of floodway and maybe some wetland mitigation. And whatever land is impacted north of 2MR is intended to be made up in the area that's now been dedicated south of 2MR as that 3.5 hectare lot 15 block, lot. So that is what you're seeing in the two applications before you. From the county perspective, I think the biggest issue is it does follow the ASP generally in terms of land use concepts. It's following the IDP generally. And our concern would be anything that would obstruct the flow of water through this area. Because if it backs up, it goes into our Carlisle estates and has a negative impact on us. I don't think that they're doing that. I think that they are leaving ample space for the floodway. And it's for that reason that I recommend we communicate to them that we have no concerns with either of the subdivision applications.
All right, any questions? Oh, go ahead.
In the new IDP, isn't there a maximum lot size?
That's the existing IDP that has a maximum lot size. And given that we're trying to talk about whether or not there was a good policy, this one, so if I recall correctly, I'm not going to get it verbatim. It was along the lines of the county is supposed to create residential parcels that are 1 acre and bigger. And the town is supposed to focus on parcel sizes that are 1 acre and smaller. And where that falls apart is examples like the one you see right here on the screen, when we're no longer dealing with an individual house, but we're dealing with something typical of a 40 to 50 unit multi-lot assisted living type development that's going to have a bigger footprint and need a bigger parcel. So that being said, I still think it's generally consistent with the existing IDP. So.
Clarify.
Go ahead.
Question, the diagonal lot in the center, the lot 2MR, is that going to be developed in the future, or is that partly wetland too?
I don't know, probably, given that most of that is floodway, flood fringe for the that branch of that goes into Shuckburg Slough, is considered part of the Red Willow Creek. It's certainly the subject of a flood study from 2015 and the one that the province is currently updating it. I would expect it to pretty much what we're looking at today. If you can pull the hay off, that probably is the best use you're going to get. Beyond that, there's possibility maybe of a trail connector later on. If there was a desire to come from the park on the west side and then go down to the, kind of almost make it to Carlisle Estates, by the way, and tie in or go, I can't remember, there's a trail that's actually on the west side of the town's development. Is there a trail that runs down there?
Yeah, right on the other side of 7th Street.
So you don't, yeah. So that would be kind of the highest development I would see. And even then, that trail corridor I just mentioned, it'd be a tad redundant because there's already a route to do the same thing.
Because it goes from the west outer part past points west to the recreation area.
Yeah, it just goes kind of on a 90. It doesn't have to go through that area. So, I can't speak to the decision in 2014. They took it as municipal reserve instead of environmental reserve. don't know the background on that one, but if it was coming through fresh and we were processing it, I probably would have been inclined to recommend it as environmental reserve to reflect that flood hazard and floodway issue, which still allows a public park, but also means that you would start leaving it in a natural state. You wouldn't pay it anymore. You just let it grow.
Okay, so with that lot 16 block 2, being that it's rectangular in there, what are their intentions with that? To develop it or not?
Residential, and I'm anticipating multifamily residential at some future date. And yes, for development.
Like I look up over onto, say, like the other page of where it's not even on there. I don't know, it almost seems like there's going to be a very good portion of that that's going to be impeding, say, like on that wetland.
So that line that you see, thanks, that's the one, should largely trace the edge of the wetland without, I am not privy to the conclusions that they were drawn between AEPA and on their definition of the line. But I think that's where you're seeing the second part of the referral is that there's a trade-off being negotiated to give additional space to the south for most likely for floodwaters, actually, not necessarily saving the wetland.
But if I look at, say, like on the rectangular part, say, like the northwest corner, that would be impeding onto, say, like the wetland. Would they not have to make a contribution in the wetland society for that?
Is that the drawing on the screen you're looking at now, or the other one?
The other
You
drawing.
wanna look at the other one?
Yes, that one there. But down on that rectangular,
Yeah, without actually having, I couldn't answer whether or not it's exactly a wetland underneath that area without actually having a study around that. So it is possible if it is deemed to be a portion of a pocket of wetland, it would be very similar to what we face when we do some of our road widening. The property owner is eligible to go through the no net compensation and loss and could make a financial contribution.
thank you.
Is this subject to the new tax levy rate of $6,555 or the former levy rate, if they choose to pass that along to the developer?
I'm afraid, Mr. Chair, I don't know that information, and I can't speak to, both are heading back to the same council agenda, and I'm not sure which is going through first, the new offsite levy bylaw or the subdivision approvals.
If it were you guys, you'd probably be nice. So.
Bold assumption.
Yeah.
All right. Carrying on. Any other?
I would actually go the contrary, that they've alerted the developer to the change, because that's a significant development to pass up the money, and they need the infrastructure money. But again, I also would have taken the MR as ER, so it's not really what I would do, it's what the town has chosen, makes their choices. Our referrals are based on, does it impact us in our ability to plan and manage what's happening on our side of the line? I think the connecting item is really the floodway.
Any other questions, comments? Entertain a motion if someone's willing.
No, I'm not making the motion, Council Gender, or Member Gender.
Just receive for information?
No, we do actually well, you can choose to do receive information. My recommendation would be actually communicate back and let them know.
Same as our last couple referrals.
Earnings making a motion to,
Whatever Michelle wants to read.
Well, that could be it.
That's a little strong. You okay with that?
to instruct administration to communicate with the town that we have no concerns. All right. All in favor? Carried. No old business. Oh,
Mr. Chair, if you'll entertain it, a last minute verbal addition.
sure.
In our discussion and our first look at an application with Bitcoin, I was wondering if MPC wanted to maybe create some direction for the department to make sure that future applications are circulated to adjacent landowners. We do have that discretion in our bylaw built in, but if that's going to be a regular expectation of the group, I think a motion to that effect would be enough for us to then remember that and go ahead and treat all future applications in that same manner as part of the deeming the application complete process, so that we bring that information to you in the future.
Definitely think the majority would be in favor of that.
I would make that motion.
All right, all in favor? And carried. All right, now we are the old business. In camera, do we have any in-camera updates? All right, I'll welcome a motion. Taking us in the camera. Paul, all in favor?
Okay.
Carried. Carried. Well, we set next meeting already. We changed the date, so only one thing left to do. Ernie, motion for adjournment, all in favor? And carried.